Welcome back, everyone, to LexTalk. This is Season 6, Episode 5.
Great to be back.
So today we're diving right into something I think, well, pretty much everyone experiences, right?
Yeah.
Do we actually speak differently depending on who we're with? Or where we are?
Or even how we sort of see ourselves in that moment.
Exactly, that little voice in our head. It seems simple, but it's such a big question, especially for us thinking about English and linguistics here in Thailand.
Absolutely. It really gets to the heart of language, doesn't it? It's not just, passing information back and forth.
No, not at all. And that's why this is so important for, well, educators, parents, really anyone interested in the English language in this kind of multilingual setting.
Right. Because it touches on belonging, power, self-image, all tied up in the words we choose.
So we're going to unpack how our language and our identity are like deeply connected. Okay, first things first, this idea of language identity. What exactly are we talking about? It feels bigger than just grammar rules.
It definitely is. Language identity is that really fundamental link between how we talk or write and who we feel we are. As individuals, yes, but also as part of different groups.
Different groups,
Yeah.
like family, friends, work colleagues.
Precisely. It's about belonging. It's about how we navigate social dynamics, maybe power dynamics too. Our language choices signal a lot about us.
So it's like our language is constantly reflecting different facets of who we are, depending on the situation. Almost like a social signature that updates.
That's a great way to put it. Think about the different roles you play every day. You probably don't speak the exact same way as a teacher in front of a class compared to when you're chatting with your friends, right?
Right, definitely not.
Each role might bring out a slightly different linguistic version of you. A different part of your identity comes forward through language.
Okay, can we make this more concrete? Maybe an example from Thailand that our listeners might recognize.
Oh, absolutely. A classic example is maybe a Thai student. In the classroom, talking to the teacher, they might use quite formal, careful English, very standard. Okay. But then, maybe later that day, hanging out with their friends, they switch easily into Thai, or maybe that mix of Thai and English, Tinglish, as people sometimes call it.
Right, I hear that all the time.
It's the same person, but the language uses shifts dramatically, and that shift reflects, their relationship with the people they're talking to, the social context. It signals a shift in their social identity in that moment.
That makes sense. And this isn't just happening randomly, is it? There's theory behind this.
Oh, for sure. Feels like sociolinguistics, psycholinguistics, identity construction theories, they all look at this. Language isn't neutral. It actively does things. It positions us socially.
It positions us. How so?
Well, the way we speak can signal our background, who we align ourselves with, maybe even our aspirations. It's a constant performance of identity, whether we're conscious of it or not. Language is a powerful social marker.
Okay, so that leads us nicely into things like code switching and style shifting. These terms come up a lot. Can you break those down for us?
Sure. Code switching is pretty much when you change languages or dialects within the same conversation, like sentence by sentence or even mid-sentence sometimes.
Okay, switching tracks completely.
Kind of. Whereas style shifting is more about adjusting your, let's say, your tone, your vocabulary, how formal or informal you are, usually within the same language.
Okay. So code switching is changing the language channel. Style shifting is like adjusting the volume or tone on one channel.
That's a good analogy, yeah. And both of these things show how aware we are socially, how we adapt our language, and therefore our presented identity to fit the situation. We're reading the room constantly.
Right, often without even thinking about it.
Most of the time, yeah. It's quite automatic.
Could you give us a clear example of code switching? Maybe a teacher here in Thailand?
Yeah. Imagine a bilingual teacher. Maybe they're in the staff room talking English with other English-speaking colleagues. Fluent, natural English. Then a parent comes in who speaks primarily Thai. The teacher might seamlessly switch to Thai to communicate effectively and, build that connection. Or even with a student, they might use some English instructions, then switch to Thai to clarify or offer encouragement.
So it's practical but also relational. It builds rapport.
Exactly. It signals respect, understanding. It's not just about efficiency.
And these shifts, style shifting and code switching, they connect to bigger linguistic ideas, don't they? Like register.
Absolutely. Register is that idea of formality level. Are you writing a formal report or texting a friend? That's register.
Right.
And our choice of register, our style, even the dialect we might lean into, it's all influenced by the situation. Social factors, cultural norms, even how we're feeling psychologically at that moment. It shows how flexible language is.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Multilingualism and language hierarchies. It sounds potentially tricky. What do you mean by hierarchies here?
Well, in many places with multiple languages, like Thailand, it's common for one language to be seen as having more, maybe prestige or power, than others.
Prestige. Associated with what, usually?
Often, things like higher education, better job opportunities, maybe modernity or being international.
And English often falls into that category globally and locally.
It frequently does, yes. English is often positioned as the language of global business, science, higher education. And while, knowing English can absolutely open doors, there's a potential downside.
Which is?
It can sometimes overshadow or even devalue local languages and the identities tied to them. The strong focus on English, say in schools or certain industries, might unintentionally send a message that Thai or other local languages are somehow less important in those contexts.
That's a really crucial point. Does this create pressure then for learners or even teachers here to speak English in a certain way, maybe aiming for a so-called native accent?
Oh, definitely. That pressure can be immense. People might worry about sounding wrong or foreign. And this fear, well, it can really stifle their confidence.
I can see that. We hear about students in Thailand sometimes being hesitant to speak up in English class.
Exactly. It might be partly because they're afraid of being judged on their accent or grammar, afraid of sounding different. That fear of making mistakes, linked to this idea of a correct standard, can seriously get in the way of actually learning and using the language.
This touches on heavier concepts, doesn't it? Like linguistic hegemony. What does that mean in this context?
Linguistic hegemony is basically the dominance of one language, often tied to historical or economic power, influencing which languages are valued, taught, used in official settings. So we need to think about how the global status of English might subtly shape language attitudes and policies here, sometimes at the expense of Thailand's own rich linguistic diversity.
Wow, okay, so this has direct implications for English language teaching, ELT here. How does a learner's identity fit into the classroom?
It's absolutely central. When students learn English, they're not just learning words and rules, they might actually be developing, you could almost call it a different English personality.
In English personality, what do you mean?
Well, a way of expressing themselves in English that might feel a bit different from how they are in Thai, but it's still them.
Yeah.
They're figuring out who they are in this new language. It's like adding another layer to their identity.
So teachers aren't just teaching English, they're kind of facilitating identity exploration too.
In a way, yes. That's why it's so incredibly important for teachers to create a really supportive, safe classroom space. A space where students feel they can try things out, make mistakes, and express their developing L2, their second language identity, without feeling embarrassed or judged.
Especially for teenagers and young adults, right? That's a key time for identity formation anyway.
Exactly. Language learning is identity work, particularly during those formative years.
Okay, so a practical tip for educators listening. How can they encourage this?
Definitely encourage self-expression, activities like maybe low-stakes journaling in English, role-playing different scenarios, having debates where they argue for their own opinions. Anything that lets them use English to say what they think and feel, make it meaningful.
And I guess the approach needs tweaking depending on the context, like ESL versus EFL.
Yes, that's important. In an English as a second language setting, where English is all around outside the classroom, the identity negotiation might look different than here in Thailand. And English as a foreign language setting where exposure is often mainly in the classroom. Teachers need to be aware of that background.
Right. Okay, one last area. Let's think about English teachers themselves. They must navigate different Englishes all the time, right? Professional versus casual.
Oh, constantly. Think about it. They might use quite academic English for their own reading or writing, then switch to a clearer, perhaps slightly simplified classroom English for teaching, and then use much more informal, relaxed English with colleagues or friends.
They're style shifting all day long.
Pretty much,
Right.
which highlights how crucial this skill is. And it underscores why teaching this awareness, register awareness to learners is so valuable.
So learners understand it's not just what you say, but how you say it and when.
Exactly. Knowing that language isn't monolithic, that it changes with the situation, is key for really effective communication. It helps them choose the right tool for the job, linguistically speaking.
Makes sense. Can you suggest a quick activity teachers could use to make this concrete for students?
Oh, sure. A simple one is just direct comparison. Show them a formal email request versus a casual text message asking for the same thing. Like, I would appreciate it if you could, versus, hey, can you just...
Okay. Contrast them directly.
Yeah. And then follow up with role play. Get them to act out, say, a formal job interview, and then immediately switch to ordering food casually with a friend. Feeling the difference really helps it stick.
That sounds really effective. This has been, well, incredibly insightful. It really drives home how language and identity are just so tightly woven together.
They really are.
And for everyone involved in English education or just supporting learners here in Thailand, understanding that connection feels essential. It's about fostering confident communicators, not just correct ones.
Couldn't agree more. Respecting that link between language and self is key to creating genuinely empowering learning environments.
Well, on that note, that's all we have time for in this deep dive. But the conversation definitely continues.
Absolutely.
Don't forget, you can keep up with LexTalk on all our platforms. We're on our website, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, SoundCloud, and Spotify. Just search for @LexTalk Podcast.
Yeah, join us there, share your thoughts. Let's keep exploring language together.
And looking ahead, our next deep dive, Season 6, Episode 6, we'll be tackling some common misconceptions. We're debunking myths in linguistics. What's true and what's not.
Ooh, that sounds like fun. Should be interesting.
It should be. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. Until then,
Let's talk, let's learn.
let's Talk.